Hey guys, welcome back to another Coaching Tips with Ben. I'm turning this into a series after the incredibly positive response that I got after the core for powerlifting video that I put up. Thank you guys so much for that. As per my usual disclaimer, I do want to state for the record that any information you get from me here is usually based off of my opinion, my experiences, things I've seen in training, specific bits and pieces of research that I've picked apart myself and looked into. I am not a doctor of exercise science, physiology, kinesiology, nutrition, or anything like that. I have just been doing this for a long time. I've witnessed a lot of high-level people talk about these topics. I have witnessed a lot of high-level people utilize these ideas, and I'm sharing my opinion with you guys because I think that there are a lot of people who are less qualified or not qualified at all to give information, and they can potentially give harmful information. I want to try to give back to the community that's been so good to me by giving you guys what I believe to be some quality, helpful ideas, tips, and just considerations for your own training, with the sole purpose being a safer, healthier, and stronger lifter as a result. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so the topic for today's video is going to be breathing for powerlifting. And I know what some of you may or may not be thinking, well, I'm practicing that right now, I'm pretty boss at it, I've been living for as long as I've been living, I'm watching videos on YouTube, breathing alright. Well, good for you, congratulations. But what we're going to be talking about is breathing for the specific purpose of optimizing your powerlifting potential when it comes to the squat, the bench press, the deadlift, and keeping your spine neutral, bracing your core, and being generally healthier and less at risk while doing this potentially dangerous activity. So most people breathe up here in their chest. They carry a lot of stress, the way they sit in chairs in offices. We get a lot of tension up here, and we forget how to use most of our lungs. We have these giant, beautiful, amazing lungs that can be filled with oxygen, and we use this little top part of them with this chest breathing, which is so not the way that you would want to use them. Instead, we should focus on belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, which is where you use the dome-shaped muscle that sits underneath the lungs called the diaphragm to allow your lungs to fully expand and get more use out of the same organ, and it's just more bang for your buck. If you could breathe more efficiently, why wouldn't you learn how to do that? And so a way to practice that is to lay down on the ground and put your hands on your stomach and try to breathe and see if your stomach will naturally rise and fall. And if it's not, go ahead and cue on your hands and say, well, I want to try to and you can improve that. Start by laying down, move to the point where you're sitting down, and then eventually you can stand and do it. But that alone is going to improve your quality of life. How does that apply to powerlifting? Well, it allows you to get in a position where you can brace your core and make it more capable of dealing with a heavy load either on your back or as you're prepping to pick it up. You don't want your spine moving around while you're lifting. You want to eliminate as much extraneous movement as possible to make your movement and your motor patterns as efficient as possible. So Chris Duffin had a video about this, and he really did make a few really awesome points, and he had a really great analogy that I enjoyed, which was if there is a really heavy weight about to fall from the sky and land on your shoulders, you couldn't move your feet, how are you going to catch it? Are you going to catch it like this? Probably not. That's going to wreck your day, not fun for anybody. What if you have this overarch position and you're like this? Well, that's also not ideal. Your spine's not neutral. You have nothing underneath it's going to hit, and you don't have anything backing yourself up. You want to be this strong, solid column and become as thick as possible for that to occur. So for that to happen, you have to keep your sternum from getting too crazy funky up here. Keep it down here. Put your hands, just go ahead and practice this. Put your hands on your obliques. Big breath in. And then watch, feel, and cue to have your entire waistline expand like that. Not just out, not just out, not just back. Expand all at the same time. And think of it like a twig. Think that you have a small twig and how easy it would be to break that in half. Now think you have a big thick branch how much more difficult does that become to break it? It's because that the larger diameter is going to make it harder for the weight to move you one direction or the other. And if I'm braced here, I can't get myself out of that spinal neutrality, at least until I get up to this upper spine. And the same deal with that overarching. I can't really do that because it's braced and it requires way more force to take it too far one direction or the other. And that's what we want to create in a squat or a deadlift. We don't want to have to worry about moving the spine during the lift. We want to be solid and we want to be protected and put our attention where it matters in the leverage areas that are being utilized. In the last video, I had a lot of people asking, well, can I train my core keeping the principles that you mentioned with a weighted plank? And I say that there are some positive benefits, just like a heavy walkout would do. But the thing that it's missing, the kind of the crucial point that I like to consider with the abro rollouts and the hanging leg raise, those have you in a braced, upward, extended position that's solid, not overarched or extended, but it also makes you move through some sort of motion. So I'm keeping this position while some part of me is moving. A squat, you brace this and then you move. A deadlift, you brace this and then you move. And this needs to stay stable. You don't want this to move, but somewhere you are moving. And so that's why I didn't include weighted planks in there. Also, it's really hard to train those when you don't have a partner to load weights on your lower back. Anyway, something to consider with this kind of technique, I suppose, and it's just a way to get yourself ready to squat heavy or deadlift heavy. A lot of people wear a belt, and a lot of people do it in a way that defeats the purpose of wearing a belt. You'll see guys come on, a lot of times they have the prong belts where they'll hook it onto their rack and they'll pull it 3 or 4 notches farther than they need to, and I will just look at this and say, I wonder what they're thinking this is doing. You just took this potentially very strong, stable, expanded core and you reduced it on purpose. That's not the purpose of a belt, at least not by my understanding. If there's some other thing that it's supposed to do that people are just not letting me know, please fill me in the comments section, but it just doesn't make sense to me. You want to leave your belt loose enough that you can expand into it and effectively increase the solid diameter of your waist. So it's loose enough, and then I take a big breath in, and I brace against it. It's not loose anymore. I just created my own core tension, and now I cannot physically overarch or overextend in this way, overflex in that way. You want to create the least movable core that you are possibly capable of making so that you can utilize it and move the most weight possible as safely as possible. That same principle can be really helpful for someone who they're flexed too much in the deadlift, they have a lot of lower back flexion. Instead of trying to overarch to fix the problem, which most people do, what if I got to this position and instead of forcing all of this up and segmenting my spine multiple times to try to get into that position, which isn't a whole lot better, what if I just took a big breath and braced my core out? It's uncomfortable, especially wearing a belt, to get there, but it puts your spine in that neutral position, and if I get strong enough in the core through practicing this, then I have the potential to put all of my focus into the parts of my body that should be moving and going through their ranges of motion to optimize the movement and get the most out of it. I'm not saying that everybody should do the lifts the same way. I'm not saying that the individual difference doesn't exist or that people will not find variation of motor pattern or movement that may be beneficial for them with their genetic structure, their skeletal structure, their leverages, or any of that. But what I am saying is I cannot think of a single person who will benefit from having extraneous spinal movement in the middle of a squat or a deadlift. You want this to be solid, you want this to be as braced as possible, and so that's the consideration, and you have to think about that with your breathing. This is not something that is super easy to do. This is not something that you will try it the first time and it will necessarily work perfectly. This is something you have to work on, work towards, and practice all the time. Every time, I mentioned in the core video, I don't know why I pointed over. The core video is not over there. It's on YouTube. You can look that up too. I mentioned in that video though, that every time you practice a motor pattern incorrectly, you are improving that deficiency. You're practicing it wrong, you're embedding a bad motor pattern. The same happens when you're breathing incorrectly. If you are sitting there and you catch yourself chest breathing for no reason, stop. No, don't stop breathing. Oh man, there goes YouTube right there. I destroyed everybody worlds over because Ben told them to stop breathing. No, stop the chest breathing, focus on improving that, and practice diaphragmatic breathing just sitting there. And you don't have to be loud about it. I'm doing it because there's a camera and I don't have a microphone. By the way, I'm sorry. If you guys want to buy me a microphone, let me know and I'll be all for it. But that is going to be a better pattern of practicing to get to the utilization of this. And it's something that if you are serious about improving your lifting, it needs to be a consideration. You're not going to breathe incorrectly and reach your fullest potential. It's just not going to happen. It's the better you get, the more seriously you have to take these little niche things, which I think happens to be really foundational and fundamental. It's one of the first things I'd want to work with you on, but it's one of the least talked about topics. Some other videos, I mentioned Chris Duffin, and he's had a series about breathing for powerlifting and bracing. I know that Chad Wesley Smith with the Juggernaut Training Systems has some videos about it. I know there are many more out there, and I would recommend you guys look into some of those other things. Again, please don't use me as your only source of information. I feel like I have a pretty good understanding about the way that a lot of things work, but I'm far from being the only one who knows, and the more information you get, the better, because you're going to be able to process it for yourself and utilize it differently. The day that you stop seeking that knowledge is the day that you stop having the potential for improvement. So I hope all of you continue to look for better ways and better explanations and better understandings of all of these concepts, and hopefully you can apply it and have it work positively for you in your own lifting. Thank you guys for watching, and I will have a training video up tomorrow, and we'll get more of these up as I am able to. So thanks again. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.